I never thought I'd get into a wrestling match with my best friend and end up questioning everything I thought I knew about him and myself. But that's exactly how last Friday night went down, in the most ridiculous, unexpected way. So a bit of background. I'm Alex, 27, and my best friend Liam and I have known each other since college. We met in some dumb philosophy class neither of us really cared about, bonded over terrible coffee and worse jokes, and somehow became inseparable. He's one of those people who's effortlessly charming, tall, lean, with this easy smile that makes everyone around him feel like they're the most interesting person in the room. Me? I'm more the sarcastic, slightly awkward type who's happy just sitting back and letting Liam do his thing. We hadn't hung out much recently because life got busy. He's working at a startup that's apparently the next big thing, and I've been buried in freelance gigs that pay the bills but drain my social energy. So when he texted me out of the blue on Friday afternoon, suggesting we, quote, catch up and maybe settle an ancient debate, I was hesitant but curious. When I got to his apartment, the vibe was casual, like old times. He was wearing this faded band tee and those worn-in jeans he always rocks. We grabbed some beers, talked about the usual stuff, work, movies, the endless parade of adult responsibilities, until he smirked and said, "All right, it's time to settle this. Best 2 out of 3 wrestling match. Winner gets bragging rights forever." I laughed it off. Liam and I wrestled as a dumb joke back in college, but mostly just to mess around or settle a silly bet. I never thought it would mean anything, so when he challenged me, I figured, why not? It was all in good fun. We cleared some space in his living room, furniture shoved awkwardly to the side, and just like that, we were on the floor, trying to pin each other down while laughing and teasing. But after a while, something shifted. The joking stopped feeling like a joke. Every look he gave me, every touch as we grappled, it started striking a chord I wasn't prepared for, and that's where things get complicated. Because wrestling with Liam wasn't just a game anymore, it was something else. Something I couldn't really put into words at first, but it was definitely there. Before I knew it, I was tangled up in a mess of feelings, questions, and the kind of nervous excitement that makes your heart race for reasons you can't explain. And all this just from a silly wrestling match that was supposed to be nothing serious. If you think wrestling your best friend is just a joke, well, you're probably right. But sometimes, those jokes turn into the most unexpected stories. And this one? It's only just beginning. The first time I really noticed it was when Liam pinned me down. His hands steady, but his eyes locked on mine longer than they ever had during our usual banter. I caught a flicker of something. Maybe surprise? Or nervousness? I don't know. It was subtle, but with someone like Liam, subtle is never subtle for long. I tried to brush it off, of course. Okay, you got me, I said, laughing and pushing at his chest to break free. But my heart was doing some weird little stutter, and I wasn't sure if it was from the wrestling or something else. Liam just smirked and said, "Best 2 out of 3, remember?" And so we went again. This time, I was the one who managed to pin him, and the moment his back hit the floor, I felt a weird tingle shoot through me. I looked down at him and suddenly felt self-conscious about how close we were, how visible every tiny detail of his face was, the slight crease between his eyebrows, the way his mouth twitched like he was trying to hide a smile. "All right, final round," Liam said, sitting up and wiping a bit of sweat from his forehead. "Winner takes all." We circled each other like idiots, trying to find some advantage. And then, as we lunged, I realized I wasn't just wrestling to win. I was wrestling to stay close to him, to feel the warmth of his body, the quick movements under my hands. It was dumb and ridiculous, and if you'd told me an hour earlier that I'd be thinking this way, I'd have laughed in your face. But here I was. Caught up in it, we collapsed in a heap on the floor, breathless and laughing. Liam looked at me then, and his smile softened. "You're not the same guy from college," he said quietly. "Neither are you," I admitted. There was a pause, this weird stillness between us that felt loaded with something neither of us was ready to name. I wanted to say something, anything, but all I could manage was a shaky, "yeah." That night, after we finally stopped wrestling and grabbed fresh beers from his kitchen, things felt different. We sat on his couch, legs stretched out, the air thick with unspoken thoughts. Liam looked over at me and said, You ever think about what it would be like if we weren't just friends? I choked a little on my beer and laughed nervously. You mean like us being, I don't know, more? He nodded, eyes a little serious, but still holding that easy charm. Yeah, I mean, I've thought about it. A lot, actually. I wanted to say I'd never thought about it, but that would have been a lie. Moments had flashed through my mind over the years. The way he looked at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't paying attention, or how I felt a little burst of hope when we got close enough that our shoulders touched. But I always shoved those feelings down because I was terrified of ruining the friendship. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. Because it's complicated, he said, running a hand through his hair. You're my best friend, Alex. I didn't want to risk that. But honestly, after tonight, it feels stupid to pretend like nothing's changed. His honesty hit me like a punch to the gut. I realized maybe I'd been pretending too. Maybe we should stop pretending, I whispered, and he smiled, the kind of smile that makes you forget everything else. We didn't kiss that night, not yet. But there was a new kind of closeness between us, one that felt electric and terrifying all at once. We talked until the early hours, about everything and nothing, past crushes, worst dates, stupid fears. And in the quiet moments, I caught him looking at me like he was trying to memorize every line of my face. The next day, we met for coffee, and it felt different again. Not awkward, but charged. We joked like usual, but there was this underlying awareness that neither of us was just friends anymore. A few days later, Liam texted me something simple. Want to come over and wrestle again? But maybe this time, without the jokes. I stared at my phone for a long time before replying, my fingers trembling a little. Yeah, I'd like that. And just like that, what started as a joke turned into something I never expected, but something I kind of didn't want to stop. Because sometimes, the best things in life happen when you least expect them, caught in a moment you thought was just silly fun, but ends up changing everything. When I showed up at Liam's apartment that evening, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. The text had been simple, maybe even casual, but my heart was doing its own thing, an awkward mix of excitement and nerves. Walking up to his door, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The last thing I wanted was to mess this up. Liam opened the door with that familiar grin, but there was something softer, almost shy, in his eyes. Hey, he said, and it felt like the weight of everything unspoken was hanging in the air between us. Hey, I replied, stepping inside. He closed the door behind me, and for a moment, we just stood there, like two people caught somewhere between friendship and whatever this was becoming. I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks and wondered if he felt it too. So, Liam started, scratching the back of his neck. No jokes this time, just us. Yeah, I said, just us. We moved to the living room where the couch looked inviting, but instead of collapsing into it right away, Liam glanced at the floor and then back at me. You know, we could just talk, if you want. I shook my head. I want to wrestle, but like, really wrestle. No distractions. He laughed, a little nervous, but genuine. All right, deal. We cleared the furniture again and faced off, but this time, something was different. The playful teasing was still there, but the tension between us was thicker, charged with a kind of anticipation I hadn't felt before. As we grappled, I found myself studying him more closely, the way his brow furrowed when he was concentrating, the sound of his breath catching when I managed to get an arm around his waist. And then, there was the way our bodies fitted together, not just as opponents, but almost as if we belonged there. I pinned him down gently at one point, and our eyes met. The room was quiet except for our breathing. I could see his eyelashes flutter, and the way his lips parted slightly. It was in that moment that I realized this wasn't just about wrestling or winning. It was about closeness, about trust. I leaned into the moment and whispered, "This feels different." He smiled, a slow, knowing smile. Yeah, it does. I felt my stomach twist in a way I couldn't explain. Before I knew it, Liam's hand was on my cheek, warm and steady. My heart hammered so loud I was sure he could hear it, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned closer until our foreheads touched. "Alex," he murmured, "I've wanted this for a long time." I swallowed hard, the words catching in my throat. Me too. The rest of the night blurred into something I'll probably replay countless times. There was no grand declaration, no dramatic confession. Just the quiet understanding that we were stepping into something new, together. Afterwards, we sat tangled up on the floor, the glow of the city lights casting soft shadows through the window. Liam traced patterns on my arm and said, "So what now?" I looked at him and grinned. "Well, I guess we keep wrestling. But maybe, this time, it's not just a joke." He laughed, the sound warm and full of promise. Deal. Over the next few weeks, things changed between us in ways I hadn't anticipated. Our wrestling matches became a kind of language, a way to connect, to communicate without words. Sometimes we'd start out playful, but they often ended with us just holding each other, quiet and content. One night, after a particularly long session, Liam looked at me and said, "I'm glad we did this. I'm glad you didn't run away." "Why would I?" I teased. "Where else would I get a workout like this?" He rolled his eyes but didn't argue. Then he got serious. "No, really, I was scared. Scared of losing you. I felt something twist in my chest. You won't lose me, not now." That night, as I walked home, I realized something important. Sometimes, it's the unexpected moments, the ones that start as jokes, that change everything. And sometimes, those moments lead you to a kind of happiness you didn't even know you were looking for. I don't know where this is going yet. Liam and I are still figuring things out, taking it one step at a time. But whatever happens, I'm grateful for that ridiculous wrestling match that stopped feeling like a joke and started feeling like so much more. After that night, everything felt a little different between Liam and me, like we were walking on the edge of something fragile but exciting. It wasn't just the wrestling anymore. It was the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, the subtle brush of his hand when our fingers accidentally touched, and the way I found myself wanting to be around him even when we weren't wrestling or talking about feelings. We kept meeting up regularly, sometimes under the pretense of hanging out, sometimes just to wrestle, though it felt like neither of us really cared anymore about who won or lost. It was more about the closeness, the intimacy that started slipping into those moments like a secret between us. One Saturday afternoon, Liam invited me over for lunch. When I arrived, the smell of something cooking filled the apartment. He was in the kitchen, standing at the stove and humming to himself. A rare picture because Liam was usually more of the grab takeout type than make food from scratch. "Hey, chef," I teased, dropping my bag by the door. He grinned without turning around. "Thought I'd try impressing you with my cooking skills. No wrestling this time, promise?" I raised an eyebrow. "No wrestling? Then why do you have yoga pants on?" He laughed and came over, drying his hands on a towel. "Flexibility training. You never know when I might have to pin you down again." We ate at the small table near the window, the light filtering through the blinds and casting lazy stripes on the walls. The conversation was easy, like always, but there was a softness in the way Liam talked and looked at me that made my chest feel tight in a good way. After lunch, I leaned back in my chair and said, "You know, I never expected this whole thing to happen. 1 minute we're goofing around, wrestling like idiots, and now it feels like, I don't know, like it's real." Liam nodded slowly. "Yeah, it's scary but kind of amazing too." I caught his hand under the table, fingers intertwining naturally with mine. "Do you think people notice?" "Who?" he asked, a mischievous smile tugging at his lips. "Us." He shrugged, but there was a hint of a blush creeping up his neck. "Maybe, but honestly, I don't care. Besides, it's not like we're hiding it, just figuring it out." That was the thing. We weren't rushing anything. There was no pressure to define it or label it. We were just being, and somehow that felt like the most important part. Later that evening, we found ourselves sprawled on the couch, flicking through random shows with the volume low so we could talk over it. "Remember when we thought wrestling was just a joke?" I said, nudging him with my shoulder. Liam laughed softly. "Yeah, and now I can't imagine it without you." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me that wasn't just from the beer. Me neither. There was a pause, and then Liam looked at me seriously. "You know, I've been thinking about us a lot lately, about what this means, about how I want to be there for you, not just as a friend or wrestling partner, but as something more." My heart hammered in my chest. I feel the same way. Honestly, I've been scared to say it, but I want that too. He reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering on my cheek. Good, because I'm not going anywhere. I leaned into his touch, feeling an overwhelming mix of relief and happiness. Neither am I. In the days that followed, things continued to unfold naturally, like a story we were writing together, without a script. We started spending more time outside the apartment, going for walks in the park, grabbing coffee at that little place downtown, even meeting a few of Liam's friends, who, surprisingly, were all smiles and warm welcomes when he introduced me. One evening, after a long walk under the city lights, Liam reached for my hand and squeezed it. "I'm glad we gave this a chance," he said softly. "Me too," I replied, feeling like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. It's strange how something that began as a joke, two best friends wrestling for fun, could turn into the kind of connection I'd been craving without even realizing it. Liam and I were discovering new parts of each other every day, building something that felt honest and real. And honestly, I can't wait to see where this goes. Because for once, the uncertainty isn't scary. It's exciting. It's like wrestling all over again, but this time I'm ready to hold on and never let go. A couple of weeks into this new us phase, things were settling into this comfortable rhythm that felt both exciting and familiar. Liam and I had this easy way of being together. No grand gestures, no pressure, just a quiet understanding that we were navigating something we both wanted but didn't quite know where it was headed. One evening, Liam invited me over after work. I wasn't really expecting anything special. I figured we'd watch some dumb show, maybe wrestle a little, and call it a night. But when I walked into his apartment, I immediately noticed the soft lighting and the faint scent of vanilla candles. There was a playlist of mellow songs humming in the background, and Liam was standing in the kitchen, looking nervous. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual as I set my bag down. "Hey," he replied, a little too quickly. Then he cleared his throat, rubbing the back of his neck. "I was thinking, maybe we could try something different tonight." I raised an eyebrow, curious, and a tiny bit on edge. "Like what? More wrestling?" He chuckled nervously. "Well, yeah, but maybe slower, less wrestling, more just being close." I smiled, my heart skipping a beat. "I'm in." We moved to the living room, where Liam had already pushed the furniture back, leaving just enough space for us to sit comfortably on the floor. I could feel the anticipation buzzing between us as we settled down, side by side, our legs almost touching. "For what it's worth," I said, "I've been thinking about that first wrestling match a lot lately. How stupid it seems now, considering where we ended up." Liam laughed softly. "Yeah, who knew a dumb joke would lead to all this?" Our conversation drifted into silence, the kind that feels full, but not awkward. He shifted closer, his leg brushing against mine. I didn't pull away. Instead, I reached out and rested my hand on his knee. The electricity that sparked between us was undeniable. "I like this," Liam whispered. "Just you and me, no distractions." "I do too," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Suddenly, he turned towards me, his eyes searching mine. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything," I said, heart pounding. "Are you scared?" His voice was soft, vulnerable. I blinked, taken aback by the question. "Scared? About us?" He nodded. "Yeah, I mean, this is new territory for both of us. What if we mess it up? What if it changes everything in a bad way?" I thought about it. Of course I'm scared, but I'm more scared of not trying. Of losing what we have because I'm too afraid to take a chance. Liam smiled, relief washing over his face. Then, without another word, he leaned in, and our lips met in this tentative, gentle kiss that sent a thrill through my entire body. It was soft, unsure at first, then growing bolder as we relaxed into it. When we pulled apart, breathless, I whispered, "That felt right," he grinned. "Yeah, it really did." We spent the rest of the night curled up on the couch, talking about everything and nothing. We shared stories from our past, hopes for the future, and the little things we loved about each other that we hadn't dared to mention before. A few days later, we went to a local bar with some of Liam's friends. It was the first time I saw him in a social setting since we'd started this new chapter, and I was nervous. Would they treat me differently? Would Liam be different around them? But as the night went on, all my fears melted away. Liam introduced me with that same easy charm I'd fallen for, and his friends welcomed me like I'd been part of the group all along. Watching him laugh and connect with his friends while holding my hand under the table felt like this secret victory. On the walk home, Liam stopped and looked at me, his eyes shimmering in the streetlight. "I'm glad you came tonight." "Me too," I said, squeezing his hand. "It means a lot." He pulled me closer, resting his forehead against mine. "I'm still figuring things out, but I want you to know I'm serious about this. About us." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me that no wrestling match had ever given. "Me too. Let's take it one day at a time." And that's what we did. From wrestling as a joke to wrestling with feelings we couldn't ignore, Liam and I were building something real. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of doubt, awkward conversations, and times when I wasn't sure if I was ready. But it was ours. Sometimes, late at night when the world was quiet, I'd catch myself smiling, thinking about how a silly challenge turned into the most important part of my life. Because, in the end, love isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It's about the moments you choose to be vulnerable, to trust, and to hold on even when everything feels uncertain. And with Liam, I was ready to hold on for as long as it takes. Over the next few weeks, the initial rush of newness between Liam and me began settling into something more comfortable, but also more complicated. It wasn't just about stolen touches or quiet conversations anymore. The reality of what we'd started was sinking in. There were moments where I caught myself wondering if I was really ready to cross that line, to be more than just friends who occasionally wrestled on a living room floor. One Friday evening, Liam invited me over after work with that same grin he wore when he was up to something. Only this time, there was something different in his eyes, like he was holding back, maybe nervous himself. When I stepped inside, his apartment was dimmer than usual, only the soft glow of a few lamps casting shadows on the walls. He had the stereo playing some old jazz records, something mellow and intimate. I dropped my bag and gave him a teasing smile. "What's the occasion?" He shrugged, but didn't look at me. "I guess I just wanted to have you over, like, for real. No distractions, no jokes." I stepped closer, feeling that familiar flutter in my chest. "I'm here." We sat down on the couch, and for a moment, the silence stretched out between us. It felt heavy in a way I hadn't expected. I wanted to say something, but the words stuck in my throat. Liam finally broke the silence. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about what this means." "Me too," I admitted. "It feels like something I've been avoiding for a while." He looked at me then, really looked at me, like trying to see if I was telling the truth. "Are you scared?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, scared that if I mess this up, we lose everything." He reached out, his hand brushing mine in a way that made my heart skip. "I don't want to lose you either, but I don't want to live, wondering what could have been." I smiled, the tension in my chest easing a little. "Then maybe we just have to take it one step at a time." He grinned, that mischievous warmth returning. "One step at a time." I like that. That night, we talked for hours about fears, hopes, and the awkwardness of starting something new with someone you've known forever. We laughed about all the ridiculous moments that led us here, and for the first time, I felt like we were truly on the same page. A few days later, Liam surprised me with tickets to a small live music show downtown. It was one of those cozy venues, the kind with dim lights and a stage that felt close enough to touch. We grabbed dinner beforehand, and the way he looked at me over the table made me forget everything else. At the show, we sat side by side, the music weaving around us like a thread. Liam's hand found mine in the dark, and I didn't pull away. Instead, I laced my fingers through his and felt a calm settle over me that I hadn't realized I was missing. Afterwards, as we walked through the quiet streets, Liam stopped and pulled me gently into an alleyway, away from the few late-night wanderers. His face was close, the city lights painting soft shadows on his features. "I've been wanting to do this since that first wrestling match," he said, voice low. Before I could respond, he kissed me, slow and sure, like he was making up for lost time. I kissed him back, my hands on his waist, pulling him closer. The world fell away, leaving just us and that moment. When we finally broke apart, breathless, he whispered, "I'm really glad we didn't let this just stay a joke." "Me too," I said, smiling. But even as we walked home hand in hand, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered doubts. Were we rushing? Was this really what I wanted? Or just the excitement of something new? The next morning, those doubts caught up with me. I stared at my phone, debating whether to text Liam or give myself some space to think. In the end, I sent a simple message. "Can we talk later? I've got some stuff on my mind." His reply was quick. "Of course, I'm here." That afternoon, we met at a quiet cafe, the kind with big windows and soft music. Liam looked concerned, but patient, as I tried to explain what I was feeling. The fear of losing our friendship, the uncertainty about where we were headed, the vulnerability that came with opening myself up like this. He listened without interrupting, then reached across the table and took my hand. "Alex, I get it. This is new for both of us. But I promise, whatever happens, I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure it out together." His words, sincere and steady, grounded me more than I expected. I squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of his promise. "Thanks, Liam. I needed to hear that." He smiled, that familiar warmth returning. "Anytime." As we left the cafe, the sun was dipping low, casting a golden glow over the city. Walking beside Liam, I realized that love, real love, is messy and uncertain. But maybe that's what makes it worth it. And as we turned the corner toward his apartment, hand in hand, I felt ready to face whatever came next. Together, the weeks that followed felt like we were learning to dance without stepping on each other's toes. Sometimes awkward, sometimes graceful, but always real. Liam and I were still figuring things out, but there was a new kind of ease between us. The wrestling matches didn't disappear. They became our little ritual, a reminder of how it all began. But now, they were less about competition and more about connection. One evening, after a slow dinner I tried to cook, with Liam's gentle, amused help, we found ourselves sprawled on the floor again, laughter filling the quiet apartment. We wrestled for a bit, tangled up and breathless, the familiar playful teasing mixed with something deeper, something softer. At one point, I managed to pin him down, and for the first time, I held him there, not to win, but just to stay close. His breath was warm against my neck, and I felt his hand settle on my arm, steady and sure. "Guess I'm losing again," Liam murmured, his voice low and full of that easy warmth I'd come to crave. I smiled, fingers tracing lazy patterns on his skin. "Maybe, but it's the best kind of loss." We stayed like that for a long moment, just holding on. No grand declarations, no sweeping gestures, just two people who had found something rare in each other. Later that night, as we lay side by side, Liam reached over and tangled his fingers with mine. I thought about how far we'd come, from a joke to something that felt like the start of forever. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't always be easy, but it was ours. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "For what?" he asked, eyes still closed but smiling. "For being brave. For being you." He squeezed my hand gently, right back at you. In that quiet, ordinary moment, I realized that sometimes the best stories don't need fireworks or grand finales. Sometimes they're just two people choosing each other again and again through all the messy, beautiful days. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way.